Welcome to another episode of Think Your Way to an Epic Life. And I have an incredible guest and a really fun story to tell you about how we met and how this came to be. I think you're going to find it incredibly kind of spine tingling because I know I did. This lady is pretty amazing. She has been clean and sober for quite some time, and it was an unbelievable climb to that. And she's going to be real and real vulnerable here. And I'm going to be real and real vulnerable here because this is also impacting me in a different way. So this is going to be a podcast you might want to get out your tissues for. I don't know. I haven't seen it yet. So here we go. Brittany, thank you so much for coming.
Hi, Kara. Thanks for having me. It's really an honor and a privilege to talk to you today.
Yes, ma'am. I am very excited about, and I really feel like us doing this, coming together like this and talking through these really difficult situations and really difficult life circumstances. If it just helps one person, are you okay with that?
Absolutely. That's what it's all about.
Me too. Me too. So here we go. First off, who are you? Where were you born? Tell me a little bit about your life growing up.
All right. Well, my name is Brittany O'Neill, and I grew up here in Washington State. That's where I live again currently. I come from kind of a mixed background where my dad grew up in a small town in Shelton, Washington here, with very sweet, lovely parents. And my mom grew up in Beverly Hills, with her father being Pat Boone. So I had this mom came from here and dad came from here, very different, but they obviously found some things in common. I'm the oldest of 5 kids.
Hold on just a second. You just dropped this bomb that probably half of our audience is going to say Pat Boone. Yeah. Half of our audience is going to say the Pat Boone.
Right. Yeah. The one that you may have heard of depending on when you were born.
That's it.
Yeah.
Sorry. Continue on.
Let's see. So being one of 5 kids, my mom stayed home with us kids. My dad actually founded a relief and development agency that has grown and is now huge. It's called Mercy Corps International, and a wonderful organization that helps. When I was young, he would be gone in different places, business trips, but to places like Somalia and Rwanda for weeks, sometimes months. And I grew up very keenly aware that I was very blessed and that there was, darkness in the world, but that, my dad was going to help those people. And so that was cool. And as a kid, it just really, it's a scary thing. And it just makes you kind of more aware of, I just have so much. I don't have to worry about where my dinner comes from at night or if I have a roof over my head or worse,
Right. And okay. Well, and we're going to dig into that more. I think we need to have 20 of these, right? but we're just going to kind of hit the highlights. So you grew up in an environment that you realize is a very small percentage of the world.
Yeah.
Grows up like that.
Right. I don't think many kids grow up kind of having that notion, right? But I had kind of a global understanding as much as I could at a young age that I was incredibly blessed. And that kind of did something to me. A lie got planted in my mind, in my soul, not from anybody else, no other people, but maybe just the way a kid perceives things. I almost felt like I had so much and I didn't deserve it. Why me? Why did we live in this beautiful home in a wonderful neighborhood? And why did we have everything we needed when there were all these children all over the world that didn't? We would pray every single prayer, God, please help the poor children. And that was part of our prayer that we would say morning, noon, and night, So I had on one side family members that had done these amazing things and were globally known for their level of talent and entertainment. So it kind of felt like I needed to be and do something big. And I also felt like I didn't deserve what I have. It was like a weird combination that just kind of started festering in my little mind, I think.
Absolutely. So the birth order again, you were the oldest, right?
Oldest of 5. Yeah.
Okay. All right. So continue on. You grow up that way. Anything real significant that you want to add to the story before we move into?
Well, I think one important thing to mention is that for whatever reason, I started kind of doubting because of the things I just mentioned, kind of started doubting my worth or feeling like I needed to earn love. Not that my parents didn't show me a tremendous amount of love. They did. But again, somewhere in my mind, I felt like I wasn't worth it or I didn't deserve it or why me. And so I would start to try and earn it in whatever way I could. I would, if I ran track, I had to win every race. If I played piano, I couldn't make a mistake. In school, I was a perfectionist and I was a 4.0 student and varsity of the track team and things like that. And so it was like, I was always trying to earn that love that I didn't felt like I deserved. And so I could never quite get there.
Wow. Wow. Okay. And so on top of that, I'm sure that you had, because all successful people are just lucky. Just ask any unsuccessful person, right? So I'm sure you had your peers that you were a target, right? If you rise above, you're a bit of a target. Was that true for you?
I think I kind of liked being the center of attention a little bit. I think just my personality, it felt like I was earning that love. And it felt for a minute like maybe I was worth it. It's like I had a tendency towards seeking adrenaline a little bit. And so being on stage, winning first in the race, getting that attention felt good. And I liked that. And that adrenaline was something that I kind of started to seek. But when you pair like a tendency towards seeking adrenaline with a low self-esteem and no self-worth, that can be a really dangerous combination. So, I mean, I would do things when I couldn't win races anymore. I started or when I couldn't get, if I had a class that I would not get all A's in, it really started to eat me alive. And I would start to do other things to kind of, punish myself or to get that adrenaline. I started experimenting when I was a teenager and I think a lot of teenagers do, but just my particular makeup, both genetically and just where I was coming from with everything that I've explained to you, put me in a kind of a dangerous spiral that I had no way of knowing how deep it would go.
Ooh, okay. So now we're getting to the real stuff, the really heavy duty stuff. Not that all of it didn't contribute. So you started experimenting. How did you find it? Wasn't your environment pretty protected from that kind of thing?
Yeah, it was. It started off with hanging out with older friends, older boys who could get alcohol. It started off with alcohol, and I loved it. It was like when I put alcohol inside my body, all of a sudden, all of my concerns, all of my self-loathing kind of disappeared for a while, and I could just fly on this, everything's good. And so it became a coping mechanism. And I would go to whatever lengths that I could at an early age, 15, 16 and on to make it happen. And when you do that long enough, you start to gravitate towards people who are also on their own downward spiral. And so other substances and the whole lifestyle starts whirling its way into your orbit,
Right. Okay. So you're 15, 16, you're drinking fairly heavily. Did you get caught or were you really good at hiding it?
I was really good. However, my parents also noticed, and it must have been terrifying for them. They noticed that my grades didn't matter as much anymore. I wasn't, they were getting called that I wasn't at school when I was supposed to be. And so they actually sent me to one of those outdoor survival camps. They had tapped my phones and heard conversations with people that concerned them so much that they hired people to kidnap me out of my bedroom and to drive me to Idaho, where I lived outside for 3 weeks in the snow. It was insane. I think I was 14 at that time. And it was an unforgettable experience. They since kind of wish they hadn't done that. They didn't know how intense it was going to get. We were strip searched in front of the boys and girls. It was a whole thing. Should not have gone down the way it went down. I came back with these two things. I can live outside. I can take care of myself. And I'm a bad sheep. they sent me away. Like I'm the problem child. I went from like the superhero, being the oldest kid, taking care of all the younger siblings, straight A's, to the black sheep, like so fast. And I was also felt like at 14 years old that now I could take care of myself. So then again, a very dangerous combination.
Oh gosh, yes. Yes, yes, yes. Okay. So here you are, 14. What was your feeling and were you even able to feel anything about your younger siblings and them looking up to you and seeing this?
That was the hardest part. I felt so guilty for what I was doing. But at the same time, I already was in a place where I just couldn't stop. I felt like I deserved what was happening to me. I actually sat them down individually and told them, I told my brother, who's number 2, I'm number 1 out of the 5, he's number 2. I said, you're the oldest now. I want you to watch what I do. Don't do what I do. Okay. You need to make good choices. It's like I gave up. It's like I threw in the towel so early, and yeah, I had a tremendous amount of guilt. I mean, being the oldest of 5, my youngest sister I was 11 when she was born, and I did a lot of the caregiving. She was my little muse, my little doll. And here I was, like, she was all of a sudden I wasn't home anymore. I was just out. And that was really hard for her and really hard for me. And things like all of this stuff was just fuel for the fire for my self-loathing. It's like I would go out and use my coping mechanisms to take my mind off of things, to feel like I was okay. And the decisions I would make and the things that would transpire in those periods of time, I would wake up and my self-loathing would just hit a new level, so it was just fuel for the fire, and things just went on that way and went on that way.
Okay. Wow. Okay. So now you're moving on. Alcohol led to something more at what point?
Well, I started smoking marijuana in high school. And that's one of the things that I think my parents found out about. It was actually the summer between junior high and high school. So everything happened really fast. It was like a way up here to, oh my gosh, terrifying. What's going on with our daughter? And so it happened really fast with the marijuana and the alcohol. And that went on that way for a long time. I'd say that I probably moved into cocaine would be next. And that's probably when I was working in restaurants. I was 17, 18. And it kind of continued that way. And in my mind, I was like, well, whatever. If I can, hold a job, if I can pay my bills, then I can do what I want and it's fine. And all along I could, feed that bad wolf. You've heard the 2 wolves. Like I could keep feeding that addiction and that, negative self-esteem. And it was like a slow form of suicide, but I could just write it off as like, it's a party. Everybody my age is doing it. I really thought that. But they weren't doing it every day, and they weren't drinking so much that they were throwing up for 24 hours straight and then drinking again as soon as they could hold down water. Like I lived that way for years. And I had this need for adrenaline in it too. I would do things like take flying lessons and go skydiving. And it's like I would push the envelope all the time. And the things where I was pushing the envelope got more and more and more dangerous to the point where they were no longer productive in any way. It was just like, well, what's the next thing? I started smoking cocaine, and that got real dark real fast. It's like you're in your own world with maybe a couple other people. And I went to rehab in 2006 when I was 25, finally, after my parents begging me to go. I finally had a moment of clarity after smoking way too much of that for far too many days and days and weeks and weeks and weeks in a row that I'd lost my job. And I finally threw in the towel. And that was the first time when I was 25. I think I was clean for almost 6 months. And then it started as innocently as being up at a nice restaurant, getting a glass of Dom Perignon on New Year's Eve. That's what took me right back into it. Just that, and I was trying to prove to myself.
Can you stop just for a second? Okay. So you said that earlier you were talking about, if I can keep a job and I can pay my bills, then what difference does it make? And then you found out what difference it could make. And then you got better, you got clean. And then one glass is all it took, right? That first sip really is all it took, right?
Well, yeah, that's all it took, because then you have something to prove. Like, see, I did it this night and everything was fine. So I'm fine. And then it's like, okay, I'm going to manage it. I'm going to control it, and it's going to be okay because I've learned all of these things and I have all of these tools. Oh, and don't you know, I know what meetings to go to if things get really bad. So it's okay. And before you know it, I was drinking again, probably just about daily. I had my job, so everything was okay. But I was running with some people that were, not well themselves. That's the thing, is misery loves company, and sickness finds sickness. And I became real close with a guy, actually met him on my birthday, started hanging out with him on my birthday. And he was in a real dark place as well. And so I thought, if I can keep him happy, if we can go out and sing and drink, and if I can keep a smile on his face, then I'm helping him. And it was just very codependent. That was an addiction as well. And that didn't end well. And what happened in that relationship is what led to the next level of my addiction.
Okay. Can you go into it?
Yeah, I will. Like I said, he was in a really dark place, and I just wanted to keep him okay. I can just keep him okay. And he was happy when he was with me, but we were drinking and we were using, and I didn't realize some of the external things in his life. I didn't realize some things about him that were going on legally for him, with his family. He had kids that he wasn't seeing. And my judgment was so clouded. And again, it was just all about making somebody else happy. This is my purpose and everything's going to be okay. But everything wasn't okay. After an evening of a lot of drinking, I had actually brought my things over to his house. I was going to move in. This was a very fast month and a half or so. Things were intense, and we were going to go shooting was the plan. And so we went. I had a rifle that my dad had given me, and he had a handgun that he had at a friend's house. We went and picked it up and continued to drink. And all of a sudden, this real dark energy, this real dark side of him that I had not seen to this level previously, came out, and he was wielding the gun around, and he was talking about ending his life. And he was a strong guy, a beautiful man, so much charisma. He had so much to live for, and was an incredible human being, but he took his life that night. While I was in his apartment with him, we were actually in bed together. I had tried to just tried to pacify the situation and keep him okay until he went to sleep, and he did. But police knocked at the door. When they did, he counted to 3 and he shot himself in the head, in bed next to me. And it was a horribly traumatic experience. And I walked outside of that apartment to SWAT team with their rifles trained on the door. They thought he was alone. Turns out he was a felon. So him having a gun was not supposed to be something that happened. And so they were ready to take him out. And here I come barreling out the door. And that's one of many times that God has absolutely saved me from the brink of death. And you'd think maybe that would have been enough to say, look, I need to stop. I need to turn my life around. But instead, what it did is that voice, that insidious voice that had been living in my head all those years, said, look what you did now. Why are you alive? And so I remember I went to his funeral and drove myself there. And I sat and I heard his little girls singing in the pews. And I said, that's it. So all of my excuses, my things like, oh, I'd never do that drug, because then you have a problem. I thought, bring it on. Like, I had never had such a distinct reason to punish myself. And I just really didn't feel like I had anything left to live for. So that's about the time I started using heroin. And again, I didn't even have to seek it out. It's like it just all of a sudden was right there. And that was 2000, the very beginning of 2007, I think. And I was on heroin for probably 3 years, was off of it for a while, and then didn't eventually really get clean until 2016. So it was a long run.
Oh my goodness. Oh my goodness. So you can literally look back at your life and see where you were trying to kill yourself, but you didn't have the guts to do it. So you were trying to kill yourself, and God said, no, I have something else for you.
Yeah. Well, it's like I'd been trying to kill myself all along. As a teenager, I had problems with depression. I mean, all of these things it kind of goes hand in hand with all of this that I've been talking about. And I had tried to take my life with pills like a couple times when I was a teenager. Like I had tried, but after I saw what suicide did to his family, I knew that it wasn't that I didn't have the guts. I mean, maybe I didn't, but I knew I could never do that. In a very strange way. And I don't want to say sick, because to me, it was a blessing that came out of him being gone. But to me, at this point, I can never directly do that. I can never flip that switch and end my life, like that. I can never do it, because I saw how it affected them. It didn't stop me from slowly deteriorating in using heroin and eventually methamphetamine to just, phase myself out. And eventually that's what the guilt of what that was doing to my family had a big part of why I finally decided that I was going to give being clean a shot.
Wow. Okay. So just so everybody knows, I lost my sister in 2020 to alcoholism and had 2 alcoholic parents. And to be able to talk to Brittany this way on the other side of things that I wish I could have known with my sister. So you, Brittany, you were not intentionally, logically. Now you can look at it and see that the things that you were doing were akin to committing suicide. But at the time, that was not your drive.
No. I mean, I think for a long time in the beginning, like I almost didn't care if I lived or died. And that's why I was my behavior was so dangerous. But after that instance, it became like, okay, I don't want my parents to have to identify me in a morgue. And I don't want I don't want to put them through what it feels like to have somebody that you love make the choice in an instant to end their life. But also, I don't know how to live sober. I can't do it. No matter how hard I try, I can't string the days together. And that's what it was.
Got it. Okay. So you had, how many times before the actual treatment that worked for you, how many different times did you try and not succeed?
Well, there's the rehab facility I went to in 2006. Then I had that's shortly after that, we had the suicide incident. I started using heroin. Then I tried to get off of heroin. I did so successfully using Suboxone and going through a doctor. It was horrible. It was absolutely horrible. But I did it. But then I turned right back to alcohol. And in such a hard way, I will say that nothing has ever scared me like alcohol scared me. In fact, it works on the same part of the brain, the same receptors. And at one point, I intentionally got back on heroin because I knew I would stop drinking. I mean, I was having seizures if I didn't drink. I had pre-cirrhosis before I was 30. I would drink every day. I was serving at a restaurant. And if I didn't drink, I couldn't carry trays. I would shake just like I was in an earthquake. And so that's the way it was every day, every day. So the second time I went to treatment was actually for alcohol. And that was in 2011. And then I started drinking. This is when I started drinking again. And I was so terrified that I said, I know what works for me, and it's to use heroin. I know that sounds crazy. And I know that to any normal person, that sounds ridiculous, but that had allowed me to stop picking up the drink. And so I went back to heroin. I will add that I never, in all of these years, somehow, thank you, Lord, I never injected drugs into my veins. I know that changes the game. And I know that that's how a great many people, including a huge number of my friends and acquaintances, have passed away. And I was just one step from it. Like towards the end, it was like the only thing, it was the last hurrah, and I attribute that with also being part of the reason I'm still here. But to answer your question, there's the time my parents sent me away. There's the time in 2006, 2011, and then the fourth time that I went to treatment was in 2016. There were times in between there where I would try to do it myself, but I could never get more than 10 days. Like on day 10, it was like white knuckling it to day 10. And then on day 10, for whatever reason, I was like, okay, I'm totally not an alcoholic. I can drink and everything's fine. Heroin doesn't work that way though. Heroin, you can't not use it every day. But I tried to get off of that cold turkey plenty of times myself also. And it was just horrible, horrible, horrible.
So what was different the fourth time?
The fourth time, I had my own apartment. I was holding down a job. I was using heroin and methamphetamine now every day, staying up for a week at a time, drinking every day, not because I had to. At this point, it was just what I did. I would have a drink and I would smoke heroin and I would go to work, and then I was doing it at my work. And I got caught and I lost my job. And then it was like, I could feel the house of cards that I'd built trembling, like, oh my gosh, like, what am I going to be homeless? Like, I wasn't scared of being homeless. I had friends that were homeless. I knew I could couch surf. I knew I could make it work. But at the same time, I had, my brother who's also in recovery, had just gone through treatment in California where my grandparents lived. And my grandma said she knew for so long. And as much as I said I was fine, she knew. And she said, we want to help you. We want to pay for you to go to treatment. And, I brushed it off a lot, but I also had a brand new baby niece. My first niece, my first sister to get married and have a baby, had a baby. And I could tell she didn't want me around the baby. She loved me. Everybody loved me, but it's to the point where, look, I'm sorry. And I just thought, what have I become? And is there a chance for me? But then the other side would say, because I was living with my boyfriend at the time, we'd been together 2.5 years, using every day. I lived with my ex-boyfriend in that same apartment, as well as my childhood friend who had somehow come into the picture, left her family. And now we were all using together in this sick, twisted camaraderie in this tiny little apartment every day. And I didn't want to facilitate them using anymore. And I was the one paying the rent. So I felt like I was. But if I leave and go to treatment, what are they going to do? They can't go to treatment. They don't have money for treatment. They don't have somebody paying their way or buying an insurance policy. They're going to be homeless. And so I wrestled with that for a period of time. And it just came down to, my grandparents are still alive. I love my grandparents so dearly. They were still alive, all of them at that point in time. What if I could do it after 20 years of this? What if I could make it out before they pass? What if my niece doesn't have to grow up knowing that Aunt Brittany's the mess and expecting to hear that I'm dead? What if my parents can finally sleep at night? And what if me leaving means that all of these 3 that are living with me get clean too? And I just thought, I have to do it. I have to give it one more try. And Eventually I did. When you're in that frame of mind and you're not sleeping and you're on hard drugs every day, all day long, packing up an apartment and getting your affairs in order is not the easiest task. I missed 7 planes before I finally got on the one and left. And when I did, that boyfriend that I'd been with for 2.5 years, I pretty much left just, I don't know. I'm sorry. I love you. I want you to do this too, but I don't know what comes next. And I had to just believe that God knew what was best. It was out of my control. And in all odds, quite honestly, our relationship was most likely over, but this was my one shot. And did I finally think that I deserved it? And I thought that maybe I did. Thought maybe.
What made you think maybe this time you deserved it? Was it your grandmother?
It was. I will say that woman, both of my grandmothers who are now passed, were such faith-filled women who loved me and through all of it, unconditionally, as much of my family, if not all of my family did. And they stood by me, and I knew they prayed for me. And that grandmother in particular, when I was 4 years old, she was with me when I asked Jesus into my heart at 4 years old, and she never stopped believing in me. And I feel like God was with me through it all. I lived through too many things, too many. I mean, near-death experience doesn't even, there was a lot of things. And I just felt like she was tuned in, and she knew something I didn't know. And if she said that God said that I am who he says I am, and if I believe in God, and I believe there is a God, and I know that he saved me in so many circumstances, then I have to be who he says I am. And who he says I am is worthy and lovable. And so I have to believe it. I have to give it this one shot. And so for the first time ever, I got on a plane. I went to treatment in another state. I told myself, I'm never going back. Whatever that looks like, as hard as that is, I'm going to do everything they tell me to do. I'm going to go to all the meetings. I'm going to get a sponsor. I'm going to do it all this one time. And let's just see. And it was hard in the beginning. That was May 7th, 2016. And I would cry about Adam, my boyfriend at the time. What's he going to do? He's homeless. I would talk to him and he would be nodding out in a bush, like just, and here I am in a nice house in Southern California. And this is what I've left him to. But I had to push that out. I had to push that thinking out and believe that I could do what I came here to do and that God had a better plan for him. And in July of 2017, he made his way on a plane and followed me to treatment and got clean and sober. And we both went to sober livings and we ended up having a baby. And now we have 2 and we have a house, and you just don't hear about that much. And I'm so grateful that I took that chance on myself.
Oh my gosh, I am too. I am too. Because people need to hear. People who are family members of addicts of any kind and people who are addicts of any kind need to hear that it really, really is possible. So you've been clean and sober how long now?
Since 2016. So 7 years.
7 years. And yeah. Adam has been for how long?
7 years. We've both stayed clean and sober.
7 years. Wow. Wow.
We just had 7 years on July 21st. So.
Oh my gosh. Yeah. Oh my gosh. Okay. All right. So how, mic drop, like, wow. Wow. Okay. So how is your family? I wish I could interview every single one of the people on your family and ask them, how are you feeling about all
Me
this?
too.
but who your grandmother, of course, that had to be very special. How long did you have with her after you got out and she got to see you clean and sober?
Well, again, what a huge blessing. Like, God's timing, right? Like I got to spend time with her. And she got to meet my daughter, who is going to be 6 in 2 days. And I got to be there because she did end up getting ill and having kind of a rapid decline, and passed away in, I think 2019. And I got that time with her, and she got to see me clean. And I hated that I was hurting my family. I hated that I was hurting my grandparents. I hated that I was hurting my siblings and my mom and my dad. Like, that was the hardest part, because my self-loathing was for me. I loved them with everything in me, and I would have done anything to lay down my life for any one of them. But it was absolutely her and Daddy Pat. That's what I call my grandfather, Daddy Pat and Mama Shirley. There was one point when I had missed, I think, 6 or maybe the 7th plane. It was probably the 7th plane. And he got on the phone and he said, "We're throwing money into an empty hole. We're not going to keep doing it." And I thought, I don't want to be an empty hole. But it was that tough love moment of like, look, people are getting jacked around, and we're believing that you're going to do what you say you're going to do. Are you going to do it? And so it was that comment, which I'll never forget, and I'm grateful for every day. The love of my grandmothers, my other grandfather, who had pulled me aside, and my father has never seen his father cry, but there was one time when he pulled me aside when I was in the thick of it, and he cried to me, and he said, "Stop hurting yourself. I want you to live." And I can see the value of that now. And he got to see me clean and sober too. I've lost 3 of my 4 grandparents since I got clean. They all got to see it.
Whew. Wow. Okay. And your niece?
My niece, Rowan, love her dearly. She, my sister now has another child, my nephew, and they are both coming to spend the night this weekend. And they call me Auntie Binti. And I don't think they have any idea of what my life was for so long. And I'm so grateful. That's not to say that if they start having problems, that I'm not going to be there in a heartbeat to tell them the truth. And that's what I plan on doing with my daughter. And now that's a little bit of a frightening thought when you have 2 addicts. What's going to happen with our kids? And all I can do is say that they're his before they're mine. And I can tell them the truth, age appropriately, when the time is right, about what they're prone to, and what happened to us. And I think that's all I can do.
Life now is a dream, and you are feeling worthy. And I understand where you're feeling worthy. I understand that. But somebody who's watching and is saying, you know what? I don't feel worthy. I'm hearing everything you're saying, and I'm in the thick of it. And I'm just about ready to shoot up with heroin. I'm at that point now. What do you say to that person?
But to tell you the truth, it's not a flip of a switch. Every day is not dandelions and rainbows, because if I told you that, I was full of it. But what I can tell you today is that taking the effort and taking the steps and being completely willing to remove myself out of my own way and let God do his job in my life has changed things in ways that are beyond my wildest dreams. Is every day easy? No. Am I not an addict and an alcoholic anymore? Well, not actively. But you know what? I have hard days, and sometimes it sounds like a good idea. But I know that my worst day now far surpasses my best day then. And I have gifts from recovery that I never would have gotten otherwise. And I would just say, you're worth it. You're worth it. And there's people that want to help you. There's meetings, there's treatment centers, get into a sober living, go the extra mile and do everything that they tell you to do, and just put one foot in front of the other, one day at a time, 1 minute at a time if you have to, and string the days together and watch how your life changes.
So as hard as it was to go through all that, was it harder to just stay where you were?
How so? What do you mean?
So somebody who is in it right now, and they're really going through it, and they want to change, but they just don't know the first step. And I'm blanketing this to all addiction, drugs, alcohol, sex, gambling, whatever. And they're at this point and they're like, you know what? I can't, this is killing me. It's killing the people I love. I've got to do something. How do they, because at one point, I guess the reason I'm saying this is my dad agreed to go get help at one point when I think I was 16 years old. And I was so excited. I couldn't wait. When I came home from work that night, I was going to see him sober. I got home and it was like 9:30 at night. And I was so excited. And I came home and Mom was in the living room and he wasn't. And I said, where is he? And she's like, he's in the bedroom. And I went in there and he's like, it was terrible. And he's like, I'm so sorry. I did go. So he went to an AA meeting, but it was terrible. And he felt like it was terrible. So how does somebody ensure when they're finally ready and they're like, I need some help? Who do they call?
Well, I would say that if somebody is really, really ready, and that's the thing, is really being ready and really wanting to be done. And being willing to do whatever it takes, because you might go to a meeting and you might not like it, and you might feel like it's not for you and these people are crazy, but you have to look for the similarities instead of the differences, because if you do, I promise you'll find them. And if you don't, it's because your ego is getting in the way and you need to go to another one. You got to go to another one. And then you got to find maybe a different one. You got to find one where you do feel at home, and you got to talk to people, because the thing is, this disease, regardless of what addiction you're talking about, usually loves isolation. It doesn't want you to be around people who are healing. Okay. So if you go and continue to take the steps to show up, suit up and show up to these places where people are also reluctantly forcing themselves at times to do the same thing, there's power in that, because you are all collectively saying, I want to change. I don't want to live this way anymore. And there's people in that room with answers, and there's people in that room with phone numbers, and there's steps on the wall, and there's a big book that you can read. And I think that they have some format of that in just about every 12-step program. And it works for a reason. It saved a lot of people's lives. So you look up AA in your area if it's alcohol, look up CA if it's cocaine, look up Gambling Anonymous if you're a gambler. And it's just like anything else, you have to put in the work. But in the beginning, all that means is showing up, go to a meeting, and don't do your thing in between meetings. Go to a meeting every day, and all you have to do is not use in that 24-hour period of time. And if you feel like you're going to, then that first meeting that you went to, you need to get phone numbers. Because if in that 24-hour period of time between those two meetings, you feel like loaded or doing whatever your thing is, you call somebody, because they know how you feel. Your mom might not know how you feel. Your dad's not going to understand. Your neighbor doesn't care. But the person that picks up the phone when you call wants to talk to you, because you're helping them by calling them. That's the way it works. And so you just have to get involved. You just have to you got to believe you're worth it. You got to want it bad enough to do what it takes. And then you have to, and now they have Zoom meetings, since COVID. I mean, it's gone. I'll say there's something special and significant about physically going somewhere and showing up and being in the energy of other people. But if you're struggling, you can get on a Zoom meeting anytime, and hear people's stories, and you can speak and you can share, you can just drop your heart into their laps and say, help, what do I do? And they will have resources for you. I mean, people get clean and sober without treatment. For me, I feel like I needed to get away. I needed to be removed. I had to go to detox because my body was so full of so much junk. And if you have an insurance policy, there's so many wonderful treatment facilities. And if you don't, there's state-run facilities. I mean, it's all about how bad do you want it? How bad do you want it? I guarantee you it's not worth staying the way that you are right now. There's something better waiting for you, for sure.
Okay. So what if my hesitation is, I don't want to bother you?
Oh, yeah. Oh, that's everybody's hesitation they make a joke about the telephone being 100 pounds. Like, it's so hard to pick it up and to call somebody and ask for help. We want to do things ourselves. We want to control things. We want to prove that we can do it, and we don't want to bother anybody. But it goes back to, like I said, when we call other alcoholics or other people who are struggling with the same thing that we are, it helps them. It helps them to be in communication with you. That's why they create sponsors. It's not just to bring new people up through the steps. It's to keep people sober who have already done them. So to pick up that phone, you are doing them a huge favor, you know?
You know, I'm totally believing you. And I really hope that people will watch this and really feel like I feel like if somebody called you and they didn't even know you and they said, help me, you would spend 8 hours with them and talk to them but you would also have the bullshit detector on, correct?
Oh, yeah. Yeah. Nobody can carry you through it, but they can hold your hand and show you the way.
So no one can want it more than you do for you. No one can want it for you.
Right. Well, they can all day long, but it's not going to work. It took 20 years of my parents begging me to stop, trying to understand, you know, and I hated what I was putting them through. And I hated myself for putting them through it, which gave me more ammunition to hurt myself. You know, it was just this sick cycle. And no, it has to come down to, like, look, do I want to end up in the morgue tomorrow and that be it? And how's that going to affect the people that love me? Like, is that the legacy I want to leave? Is that what I want? Is that the period at the end of my life? Or do I want to give something better a shot?
So the last question I've got for you, and I think it's very, very important, is you said at one point, you said that the voices telling you, the dark voices, what do you do now if those voices try to come back and mess with you?
They do. They do. They don't go away. Every day I have to center myself with my higher power. I have to practice gratitude. I look around at everything that this life has given me now, and that and what a blessing it is. And that doesn't have to be a house, and it doesn't have to be 2 kids. But I guarantee you, if you get clean and sober, your life is going to change, and you're going to have a lot to be grateful for. And I have to do that every single day. And sometimes it's just taking a deep breath, saying a prayer, calling a friend. I still have to do that. That's probably one of the most important things, aside from getting right with God and my higher power, is that reaching out to other people and staying connected. Because my head can tell me, oh my gosh, you are so stressed out. Your kids are really hard and you've been sober all this time, and all the other moms have a Truly or a White Claw or a glass of white wine. And I have to play that tape through and say, is it worth it? It's not worth it today. Maybe in 10 years, but today it's not worth it for me to find out. And if I say that every day on into 10 years and 20 and 30, then I know I'm good. And I just thank God for how far He's allowed me to come.
Amen, sister. Thank you so much, Brittany O'Neill. We didn't get to tell your story, but I'm going to say it real quick. There is a movie. This is how we met. This is just so crazy. There's a movie called, I was looking for an inspirational movie, almost never watched TV, but wanted to watch a movie, looked for inspirational, and it said, Brittany runs a marathon. And the lady's name was Brittany O'Neill. And so I thought I found Brittany O'Neill. And
I didn't realize that.
Oh, you didn't?
I didn't know her last name is O'Neill. No.
Yes, exact same spelling.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah. So tell me that wasn't some kind of divine intervention to get us to this point.
That's right. That's right. I read that message and I thought, I've heard of the movie. I haven't seen it. So I thought, do I respond? Is this a scam? And I thought, no, I'll respond. And I just thought, look, I'm not that Brittany, but I am a Brittany. And I don't have that story, but I have a story.
Girl, you have a story, and please keep telling it. Please, 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 because I and pray over this podcast that the right people hand it to the right people, and that it really impacts families, because it has impacted me. That just to kind of get inside of your head and know maybe what my sister was thinking and what she was going through has meant the world to me. And I appreciate you more than words can say.
Oh, I'm so grateful. I'm so grateful to have been here and had this conversation with you and had the opportunity to put this out into existence. So thank you.
Thank you. Have a good one.